My name is Scott Jones, and it's my privilege to serve as one of the bishops of the South Central jurisdiction. And I'm grateful to the Mission Council for organizing this gathering. While it's in our tradition as a jurisdiction for the delegates to gather prior to a general conference, this time is especially important for two reasons. First, the options to be considered in a very short special session are complex and need a lot of study. That best comes through conversation like we're having here these 2 days. Second, I truly believe we're in a situation described by Robert Frost. Two woods diverge in a wood and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I understand my job in this presentation is as helping you understand the traditional plan in two ways. First, I hope to share with you the deep rationale which I perceive to be behind it. And second, I want to acquaint you with the most important aspects of the proposal. Please understand me. I think all three plans have strengths and weaknesses and are worthy of your consideration. This presentation is to give you sort of the best case for the traditional plan, just as Bishop Muller gave you the interior logic for the connectional conference plan, and I trust Bishop Schnase will do the same for the one church plan. It's the goal of our College of Bishops that after the presentations these 2 days and the conversations around the tables, that each of you has a deeper understanding of the three plans and their implications. Now first, with regard to its rationale, the values represented by this plan are continuity, freedom, accountability, and connectionalism. Continuity refers to the fact that the United Methodist Church has had stable teaching on marriage and homosexual practice, and this plan maintains that teaching. The plan believes that our doctrine is important and that our discipline flows from that teaching. The plan believes that for example, if we teach that education is a high value, we then set up ministries to teach the Bible and doctrine to our children, youth, and adults, and we set up rules requiring our clergy to be educated either in a course of study or in a seminary. Similarly, if we teach that marriage is between one man and one woman, we set up rules to make sure that our clergy and our liturgy follow that teaching. Now, it's important to emphasize that our social principles also teach that all are welcome in our church. As we say in the Texas Annual Conference, we love all God's children. Paragraph 161G says, "We affirm that all persons are individuals of sacred worth, created in the image of God. All persons need the ministry of the church in their struggles for human fulfillment, as well as the spiritual and emotional care of a fellowship that enables reconciling relationships with God, with others, and with self. The United Methodist Church does not condone the practice of homosexuality and considers this practice incompatible with Christian teaching. We affirm that God's grace is available to all. We will seek to live together in Christian community, welcoming, forgiving, and loving one another, as Christ has loved and accepted us. We implore families and churches not to reject or condemn lesbian and gay members and friends. We commit ourselves to be in ministry with and for all persons." There's a balance here of welcome and yet moral teaching that some find contradictory, while others embrace as a biblical approach of loving the person while rejecting the behavior. This plan offers people the freedom to follow Christ according to their conscience. We're now facing a situation where, on the one side, people are strongly insisting that the church's teaching be changed, while others, on the other side, are strongly resisting such change. The traditional plan is based on another value that says people should be free to follow their consciences in this matter. There's a lot of conversation predicting that people will be leaving the United Methodist Church once this decision is made. This plan includes a gracious exit provision that standardizes a pathway for annual conferences or congregations to decide they're going to follow Christ in a different self-governing Methodist denomination. Such a plan brings clarity and fairness to a process that appears to be likely. On the other hand, the changes being proposed to our doctrine and discipline are major. The trust clause is an important part of our connection, and it should not be surrendered lightly. We want to avoid the costly litigation that has plagued the Episcopal and Presbyterian churches when they have moved in a progressive direction. This plan is based on the conviction that our problem as a church is not disagreement. We've been handling our differences of opinion in this matter for 46 years. We know how to do that, and we can continue discussing it. What has changed is the culture around us, where same-gender marriage is now legal in the United States. In response to that new cultural reality, some bishops, clergy, and even annual and jurisdictional conferences have chosen to engage in deliberate disobedience to our church's discipline. Please understand me. This disobedience has not been done frivolously. It is principled disobedience. Nevertheless, such disobedience has not happened in our church by bishops and conferences since 1844. This is the cause of the crisis we are in. The traditional plan values accountability to our discipline because one of the core values of our unity is our discipline and its obedience. Clergy make a sacred vow of obedience at their ordination. Bishops take vows to enforce and uphold our discipline when they are consecrated. Our connection is built on trust and mutual accountability, and in far too many cases that has been broken during recent years. We have ways of enforcing our rules, but from the very beginnings of Methodism, some of those provisions also protected the rights of clergy against abuse of power by bishops. So we have a right to trial. Some have called the traditional plan the more trials plan. They may be right. Some of the provisions proposed in this plan are unusual, but they are a response to the violation of trust and obedience by conferences, boards of ordained ministry, and bishops. They are innovative, but the authors are seeking to address a connectional system where our common commitment to following the rules has broken down. Hence, this plan includes some innovative ways of enforcing accountability that might work without trials. You should watch the Judicial Council decisions in October very closely to see if these new procedures are found to be constitutional. The last value addressed by this plan is connectionalism. On a crucial issue facing contemporary culture, the plan would maintain the same official doctrine and same standards for ordination throughout the denomination. This plan avoids local votes in annual conferences and local churches. The traditional plan avoids those votes. On a procedural level, this plan keeps the debate about human sexuality at the General Conference. It avoids voting in annual conference clergy sessions and in local church charge conferences. The debates about controversial issues will continue under all three plans, and this one keeps them at the General Conference level rather than offering a local decision. There are two key aspects of this plan that deserve your close attention. The first is notable by its absence. It does not change the church's teaching or its rules about marriage. It also does not change our prohibition on the ordination of self-avowed practicing lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer persons. The second aspect is Petition 10. It would create a new paragraph 2801, and the rationale calls this the heart of the traditional plan. It is complex, and as you study this petition, it should be divided into two sections. The first group of provisions require annual conferences and bishops to certify in writing that they will uphold the Book of Discipline's provisions regarding homosexuality. If they do not do so, certain steps would then be taken by the General Council on Finance and Administration and the Council of Bishops in response. The second group of provisions offer a gracious exit process, which is based on the following sentence. Because of the deep conflict over the United Methodist Church's position on marriage and sexuality, a local church or annual conference may indicate its desire to form or join a self-governing church under this paragraph based upon its declaration that it is in irreconcilable conflict for reasons of conscience with the doctrine or moral teachings and requirements of the Book of Discipline of the United Methodist Church on the issues of human sexuality, or with the way such requirements are being enforced, or with the resolution of those matters adopted by the 2019 General Conference. Note the 3 reasons for leaving under this gracious exit provision, all under the heading of irreconcilable conflict. Reasons of conscience regarding doctrine, moral teachings, and requirements of the United Methodist Church on issues of human sexuality. Or second, with enforcement of those requirements. Or third, with the actions of the special session of the General Conference. For any one of these 3 reasons, a gracious exit pathway is provided. This applies in 2 different ways. First, it allows an annual conference in the United States to leave the denomination. Presently, annual conferences outside the United States have this option available to them, and the Swedish annual conference left the denomination a few years ago. This paragraph, if adopted, would allow any annual conference by majority vote to leave the denomination. It would notify the jurisdictional conference that it had decided to leave, and the jurisdictional conference would redraw the boundaries for the denomination. The departing conference would have to contribute to Westpath enough money to cover its obligations and to clarify which of its clergy, if any, were continuing in the United Methodist Church. Having made this decision, all of its congregations and clergy would follow their conference into the new self-governing denomination. If an annual conference chooses to do this, what happens to local churches and clergy that do not agree with the decision to leave? Any local church has 2 years in which to choose, by majority vote, to remain with the United Methodist Church. It would keep its assets, including property, and remain in the United Methodist Church. It would need to pay its share of the pension liability. Clergy who want to remain United Methodist could do so as well. The basic vision of this paragraph is that an annual conference that feels it can best serve Christ in a different self-governing church should be allowed to do so. And those who do not wish to follow that path should have the freedom to remain as United Methodists. The second way this gracious exit provision would work makes available a pathway for any group of 50 local churches to leave as well. Here, the petition specifies that a decision to leave must be by 55% of the local church conference. The provision here is that local churches would be forming a self-governing Methodist church. There is no provision for a single congregation to leave, nor is there a provision for them to form a non-denominational entity. Instead, this envisions the kind of separation that has allowed for different Methodist churches to work in the same geographic area. In the United States, there are 8 different denominations serving Christ and belonging to the World Methodist Council. There is a type of unity in Christ that is already present in the Pan-Methodist Commission. The World Methodist Council and other bodies that are closer in relationship than mainline ecumenical denominations would be a model for this plan. This paragraph appears to envision that kind of relationship. Yet the newly formed self-governing Methodist Church would set its own teaching and rules about human sexuality, ordination standards, and other matters which appear to some to be irreconcilable today. Whether it's an annual conference or a group of churches deciding to leave, adequate provisions have been made for local churches and clergy to have the freedom to follow their consciences and pick a Methodist church where they can best serve Christ. These provisions work both directions. If the one church plan is adopted, there may be some conservative conferences or local churches that choose to form a new self-governing Methodist church. If the Traditionalist plan passes, there may be some progressive conferences or local churches choosing to do so. The petition seeks to specify the procedures by which this could happen graciously and with clarity about the processes involved. Now I want to go over the petitions that are in this plan and summarize them for you. Petition 1, clarify the definition of self-avowed practicing homosexual, paragraph 304.3. Our debate about these matters has gone on for 46 years. As progressive persons have sought to find space to follow their consciences without penalty, general conferences have been more clear about definitions. This makes it clear that practice includes being in a same-sex marriage or partnership or saying so publicly, thereby putting into the discipline conclusions reached by the Judicial Council. Petitions 2 through 4, accountability of bishops to the Council of Bishops made easier. 3 amendments to the Book of Discipline took effect when the constitutional amendment to paragraph 50 passed. They're not in our printed books of discipline, but they have taken effect. They concern ways for the Council of Bishops to hold bishops accountable. Petitions 2, 3, and 4 change the procedures to make that process easier for the council to act. Petitions 2 and 3 would allow the council to act by majority vote instead of the current 2/3 required, and Petition 4 allows any 7 active bishops to refer a bishop's status to the Council Relations Committee. It also requires the council to refer to the Council Relations Committee the case of any bishop who does not certify that he or she is willing to uphold, enforce, and maintain the Book of Discipline's provisions regarding homosexuality. Petition 5, prohibit bishops from commissioning, ordaining, or consecrating self-avowed practicing homosexuals. Clarifies that bishops may not commission, ordain, or consecrate self-avowed practicing gay and lesbian persons, even if they are elected. Addresses tensions specified in judicial council decisions. It resolves the question of whether a bishop must ordain or consecrate someone approved by the clergy session or conference, even if he or she is unqualified. Petition 6 and 7, Board of Ordained Ministry accountability. Prior to being nominated, members of the Board of Ordained Ministry must certify in writing that they will uphold the Book of Discipline regarding homosexuality. The Board of Ordained Ministry must also have some process to determine if any candidate is a self-avowed practicing homosexual in accordance with existing judicial council decisions. Petitions 8 and 9, annual conference accountability. Annual conferences must certify that all of the persons nominated by the bishop for service on the Board of Ordained Ministry have certified their compliance with the Book of Discipline. If a conference does not so certify, it loses the right to use the cross and flame logo and all access to general church funds. Petition 10 regards gracious accountability and exit. Enough has been said about that. Petition 11, minimum penalties for performing same-gender marriages. One way in which bishops and others have sought to violate the spirit of the discipline is to provide a minor penalty for violations. This petition would specify that trial courts must assess a 1-year suspension without pay for the first offense and surrender of credentials for the second offense. Petition 12, District Committee on Ordained Ministry accountability. District committees on ordained ministry must inquire about the candidate's fitness and not approve persons who are unqualified. These qualifications include abstaining from the practice of homosexuality, and this puts into the discipline provisions of judicial council decisions. Complaint dismissal, petition 13, complaint dismissal only for reasons of law or fact. Some bishops have dismissed complaints for arbitrary reasons. This reintroduces language from the 2008 Book of Discipline that such a dismissal must specify that the complaint has no basis in church law or in fact. Petition 14, just resolution procedures require commitment not to repeat the offense. When a person is violating the Book of Discipline as a matter of conscience but seeks to remain within the United Methodist Church, he or she should commit to not committing the same offense in the future. Otherwise, the resolution of the matter is not just. Petition 15, just resolution procedures include the complainant. When a complaint moves toward trial and a counsel for the church is appointed, the original complainant loses the right to help set the terms of the just resolution agreement. On some occasions, a counsel for the church has been appointed who does not represent the complainant's concerns. This would not require the complainant's approval, but says that every effort should be made to obtain the complainant's approval. Petition 16, the church may appeal on violations of law or procedure. This allows the church to address egregious errors of church law or administration in the appeals process. Some trial courts have resorted to disobedience in their decision, which then corrupts their process. And petition 17, concorded agreements with churches in the U.S. become possible. This petition envisions a new relationship within the United Methodist Church in the United States between the United Methodist Church and any new self-governing Methodist churches formed under Petition 10 in the new paragraph 2801. Just as we have concorded agreements with other Methodist churches around the world, specifying how we're going to express our unity and our common mission, this petition would allow such concorded agreements with any new churches formed after 2019. How do these affect the various levels of our church? With regard to the local church, local churches will experience no change under the traditional plan. Congregations that feel compelled to leave the denomination are allowed to do so graciously. Clergy experience no change under this plan. The annual conference operates under the same rules we currently have, but under this plan, they would have to certify that they are in fact following the law of the church as they're supposed to do. The Council of Bishops has recently received authority to hold its members accountable, and those procedures, which are so far unused and untested, are now made easier by the provisions of this plan. General agencies remain unchanged. Our related institutions, camps, and colleges remain unchanged. With regard to the mission field, our relationship to the mission field remains unchanged. As many parts of America become more secularized and difficult for Christian evangelism, our witness remains the same, and that has advantages and disadvantages depending upon the approach that people want to take. With regard to the global church, our global church maintains its unity and common commitment to doctrine, mission, and discipline. And with regard to financial and pension concerns have been cared for in this plan just as in the other plans. Financial concerns are a serious matter because departure from the United Methodist Church to form new self-governing denominations will weaken our apportionment system and our United Methodist witness. But the aggregate amount of Wesleyan witness may remain the same, just lodged in different but related churches. I want to give you some procedural reminders here, things to keep in mind as you're working through all three of these plans. The report of the Commission on a Way Forward is 93 pages long. You should read it all carefully, and you should be grateful for the work of the Commission. They have served the church incredibly well and at great sacrifice of time and energy. Our jurisdiction had 3 members of the commission, and I know that they have given hours and hours as well as been in constant conversation with many, many people. However, the report of the commission is not all of it going to be on the table at General Conference. What's going to be considered at the General Conference are only the petitions that are included in that report, plus the other petitions that are judged acceptable in the process. We're going to hear from Bishop Harvey tomorrow the current state of the planning for how those petitions are going to be considered. But remember that there are 17 petitions in the One Church plan, 14 in the Connectional Conference plan, and 17 petitions in the Traditional plan. In addition, I've been told there are approximately 61 petitions that appear to be valid and ready for consideration from outside sources. But when you look at the Commission's report, if there's a tension between the text of the Commission's report and the petitions, it's the petitions that are going to actually affect the future of our denomination. You should also take seriously the description that the Commission did not work as much on this traditional plan as on the other 2. Even the supporters of this plan, this traditional plan, recognize that it is imperfect and needs further work. For example, one member of the commission who has been publicly identified as endorsing this plan has told me privately that the omission of the word practicing in a couple of the petitions was an inadvertent mistake and needs to be corrected. That was, in this person's view, a result of the short time frame in which this plan was finalized. Fortunately for all 3 plans, as well as for all of the petitions submitted in addition to the Commission's report, amendments are possible once the General Conference convenes. This will be especially important if the Judicial Council rules some of the proposals or some aspects of the proposals are unconstitutional. There are issues that need to be addressed, and the willingness of delegates to consider amendments in the process once the General Conference convenes will be absolutely crucial. Delegates, you need to be thinking about how to remedy any defects in these plans found by the Judicial Council or in conversations. Last, I want to remind you that petitions 2, 3, and 4 in the traditional plan are addressing paragraphs of the discipline that are in effect, but which are not in our printed versions. And unfortunately, the Commission's report is not clear on what is already in effect and what is being altered in the changes proposed by the petition. Now, it's true that the Council of Bishops has recommended the One Church plan by a 61% margin. But the other two plans had substantial support within the council, and the council's overwhelming vote was that all three plans should go forward for your consideration. Each one has strengths, each one has weaknesses. Each one is subject to further refinement in the amendment process. In my conference, I've been strongly recommending people read John Wesley's sermon, Catholic Spirit. For the clergy in the room, I trust you are rereading Catholic Spirit. Wesley encourages us to hold our opinions strongly. He says speculative latitudinarianism is the spawn of hell. If you want discussion about that, come talk to me. We can parse that. But while we hold our opinions strongly, we also have to have the humility to recognize that in matters of opinion, we just might be wrong. Therefore, the other person with a different opinion might be the one who's right. We need to focus our attention as we enter into General Conference on loving God, on loving each other, and if our hearts are as they are, right with each other, we need to give each other our hand. Thank you.